I'm Kamerie Gibson. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, the podcast. I believe that one of the most precious gifts you can share with someone is your story. Pain has purpose and stories can change lives. Your journey to become more inspired and transformed by the lives of those around us starts now. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, where we talk about transforming our pain into power. And today I have a special guest with me here today. His name is Heru Nasset.
Yes.
Heru, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience for me, please?
Yes. My name is Heru Nasset. I'm a documentarian. I'm also what I would call created this word on my own about a tech expert. So I do a lot of things in marketing. I do marketing for my father. I do marketing for myself as well. We also have a business called Panther Prince Productions where we're countlessly putting out different ways of getting knowledge across the people. We have webinars that we do weekly. We have webinars that we do monthly. And we do have a series of documentaries that we've been putting out for the past few years, from about 2017 until now and beyond, working on a few projects. We're actually putting out a project at the end of May entitled Black Wall Streets in honor of the legacy of the Black Wall Streets and the concept that there were many Black Wall Streets across the country. You know, we highlight Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we also understand that there were many other places. We just visited Atlanta, and there's a place called Sweet Auburn. That's where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was from. That was another place that was considered its own Black Wall Street. So just getting this information across to the people through various, information outlets, and understanding that we got to make everything that we do into a business. Getting the knowledge across to the people is good and is excellent, but we have to think about the legacy that we want to live for the future. And the future that we're going to have to leave is something that deals with monetary. And we got to understand that we got to do what we got to do as it relates to making our businesses and incorporating our families as well. Because then now we don't have to go to anybody to go get a job. If we have the jobs and we create the jobs, then they'll come to us for the jobs. Because of the lack of Black people having the jobs in society today, that's what forms a lot of the young people to go out and find jobs from people that don't look like them. And then sometimes they have to deal with people treating them away as if we were back, before 1865, considering the fact that, we've come a long way, but we still do have a long way to go. And I think that getting information across the people, especially on different platforms such as Instagram, such as TikTok, is definitely going to get the young people, because that's the people that you want to get. You want to get the young people. The older generation, we're going to get them, but it's the younger generation that are being ushered into these different types of positions and these different types of roles that they're going to be the ones that lead the future. The older generation has to pass the baton, and then the younger generation is going to come and pick up the baton. So we have to lay out the groundwork for those people. And I believe that people like my father has laid out the groundwork for so many people throughout the country, throughout the world. And it's my job as his son to incorporate that in what I do and everything that I do to get this message across, because I think that is so valued and is so much needed, especially for the young people and especially for what we see going various different places. The young people are the future, and I know they're ready. I have the faith and I have the confidence in our people that we are ready to make that next step. It's just that we got a couple things to do, and getting this information is definitely the first step to owning your greatness, understanding who you are. Once you value yourself, then you will put that value out into the world.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I really love the emphasis on the information, on the business, monetizing, educating our people, leaving a legacy. You mentioned your father. So, for those who do not know who your father is, could you give us a little bit of a background?
Yes. So my father, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman, formally changed his name in roughly 2005 to Kamerie. So my father is a world speaker, world-renowned speaker. He comes from the generation of the John Henry Clarks, the Dr. Benz, the Chancellor Williams, the just all of the mighty great people and the shoulders that he was able to be around. And basically, he took what he did from when he was 12 and a half years old, from when he first met John Henry Clark, being around all of those people. His first lecture was actually in Compton back in, I think it was the late 80s. So from then on, and then I was born in 1994. And then since then, he's been bringing me and taking me different places. And that's how I'm starting to do what I'm doing. But understanding who he is and what he represented, and how everything that he represents for what I'm doing and for what everybody else is doing. Because I come across a lot of people that definitely have gotten, definitely their whole paradigm has been shift once they've, whether they've seen Hidden Colors, whether they've seen him on YouTube, whether they've seen him, on New York cable back in the day talking about melanin. There's a lot of different facets that people, know my father from, and understand that. And I think the one highlight of my father is the fact that when you see him and you respect him is because of the knowledge. It's one thing when people can respect somebody because they're a sports player, because they're a rapper, because they're an actor, or whatever they might do that might be in the entertainment field. But when you start stepping out and people respect you because your knowledge, and it's more than just something superficial, I think that really represents the commitment that I know that people have. Whether it's just an everyday person, whether it's a celebrity themselves that understand what we need to do as a people and understand what a person like my father represents, and even what the other scholars that are out there and what they represent as well. So I think that people got to understand the concept behind what we need to do with scholarship. What my father represents is the knowledge, the history, and understanding all of the different parts, because we deal with history from uh, 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 like a whole perspective, but we also have to understand history from an episodic perspective, understanding that there's different episodes just as much as we watch TV shows and they have seasons and they break down into different episodes, and they're teaching you these different things, and you have to watch one episode to understand the next one, and so on and so on. That's what we have to do with history. We have to understand that history is episodic and everything happens for a reason. And the only way to break a cycle is to understand why that cycle even existed in the first place, and understanding what not to do. That's how we're going to learn as it relates to what we need to do as it relates to the future. Seeing what happened in history, the mistakes that were made, and understanding what we need to do. Because that's how you get better. It's about learning, doing better the next day than you did the day prior. That helps people put everything in a perspective that yes, you can make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but we got to understand we have to learn from that, and understanding that history is learning from those mistakes. And what we need to do now and what we need to do moving forward is to analyze that from a very critical perspective, take the paralysis out of the analysis, and understand everything with a fine tooth comb.
Yes, sir. Okay, you're talking about education, history. So, with history, whose history are you talking about? Whose history are you referring to?
Well, when I say history, I'm talking about our history, the history that has been uncovered from all of the various different scholars, from John Henry Clark to Dr. Ben to Ivan Van Sertima to John G. Jackson to Chancellor Williams, all of the history that has been uncovered. And what helps put all of that in perspective is Brother Tariq Nasheed's Hidden Colors, because now we understand that sometimes we might not always want to read, sometimes we might want to just watch something. So I think what helped Hidden Colors, it helped people see history from a visual perspective. It helped you see it from the way the editor is going to put it together, as the way it's shot, as the way it's filmed, and then you're getting the history from the various different scholars. So it helped condense a lot of our history into, let's say, an hour and a half, 2 hours. So now people can absorb that information and break it down, because they even teach the information to various different places. And even in addition to the what Tariq opened, the Hidden History Museum back in February in Los Angeles, now people can go to a place. There's a lot of Black museums around the world. You have the one in Washington, D.C., there's ones in Louisville, Kentucky. There's even ones probably in Los Angeles. But what makes what Tariq Nasheed did so so significant and important is that he's showcasing the hidden history. You'll go to the museums in DC and Louisville, and you'll see all of the artifacts and all of the wonderful things. But what Tariq is bringing that helped with the documentary and now with the museum is that these histories is the uncoverness of it. A lot of the history has been hidden. That's the thing about it. A lot of the history, they burned the books, and they treat it as if they knew that the history was so rich and so important, and they knew that if it got into our hands now in this generation, what we'd be able to do. Because look at what we're doing with what we have now. Even though every time they try to take this and they take that, we're still able to make something out of nothing, and we're able to do that even now in this generation. They can take what they want to take, they can stop teaching what they want to teach in certain areas, but at the end of the day, the information is going to get out there. And uncovering the hidden histories is what adds to the allure to understanding that, who we are as a people. And once we understand who we are as a people, we'll understand our purpose. And our purpose is more than just being something that they want to put you in a box into. You grow up and you see certain things on TV and they push certain images that they want you to be. But you could be what you want to be based off of your own interpretation and what you want to do, not what they're trying to push on you, because that never really works. Anytime somebody pushes something on you that you really don't want, that doesn't really always warrant the greatest experience for that person. They tend to always resent, what that was pushed on them in the long run. So I think once we understand our history and understand our self-worth and understand the true history and read that in the different books, like Stolen Legacy from George G.M. James, a person like him, as we can see, he died shortly after the book was released because he was uncovering truths that that they really did not want to get out there as it relates to Black people understanding their history. Because I think the real enemy of what's going on is the not understanding who you are as a people. Because if you don't understand who you are as a people, then you'll just run wild. If you don't understand where you come from, your ancestral lineage, and what we've done and what our ancestors have sacrificed, we shouldn't be acting any, sort of way. Because think about what Harriet Tubman had to do. Me and my father, we traveled up from New York City all the way up to where she had her home for the elderly and sick. And the travel up there was about a 6 hour drive, and that's driving. And back then they didn't have cars. They weren't even trying to be on that, they were trying to evade. So they if they had to take the long way to evade being captured, that's what they did. So I could just imagine, it probably took a day just to travel and going back and forth. And when you think about all of the things that our ancestors did, and her being a woman and taking that on as well, so it just puts in perspective all of the sacrifices that our ancestors did. And you got to understand that they did what they did so we didn't have to suffer. And we have to continue to fight back, even if it might not look like what we want it to be. You have to continue fighting back, because even though Harriet Tubman did what she did, she knew that even though at her age of 94, when she passed away, that she knew that at the end of the day, she still had more work to do. And she did what she did to hope that a younger person who was working in the place that she was at would carry on that legacy, and then so on and so forth. So I think that that's the key to understanding history and understanding the correct history, because once you understand the correct history, you'll understand your worth. If you only look at the history that they tell you in school, then you will only see worth in other people that don't look like you, and that's not going to be the way to proceed in society, because we need to come together and we need to understand who we are. And once we do that, I think that we'll definitely be on the right track to getting to the promised land.
Oh my gosh, there's so much in there. People are gonna have to like pause and like replay it. Definitely got to put chapters in there for people.
Yes.
Um, but okay, so you mentioned young people, education, passing the baton, history, and you mentioned hidden colors. And okay, so you said you're born in '94. I'm 97, so I'm 26, so I'm not that far from your age. But I know it wasn't, so I'm class of 2015 for high school. So it wasn't until I went to college, I would say, that I really was able to learn, not from my classrooms, but from the like extracurricular clubs I was involved in. Everything that was like African American, I was a part of it. And I just loved like listening to the Pan African professors just teach us about just things that I felt like, man, I should have been knew this. I should have learned this a long time ago if I would have learned how amazing we were before slavery or even during it. Like, I don't know. I just probably would have seen myself a lot differently, especially also being Black and Mexican and learning about the Olmec, uh, statues and stuff going on in there in Mexico. And I don't know, like you said, it when you know who you are and what you come from, it really does make the difference. And even with young people, you know all these things, but I don't know how easy it is for you to relate to just other people your age unless they're in the same circles that you're in or reading the same books. Do you know
Yep.
like what your experience been like with that?
Well, I think just the experience, because growing up in New York, like even me being light complexion, and what I was saying as it relates to, once you understand who you are and know your history, whatever somebody might think or assume about you, it's not going to affect you, and it's not going to affect how you feel about it. Because just growing up in New York, a lot of people might not have, or first rip might have thought that I was a person who was black because I was lighter complexion. And growing up and being in the Bronx, New York, there's a lot of Puerto Rican and Dominican people. So I, assumingly got put into that category or rip. But as once as people knew who my father was, and he came to my schools different times and people understood what he represent, that really wasn't a factor. But I just think that understanding, because I just believe that that's the key. Because once you understand your history, because there's a lot of people who might be Hispanic that don't understand the Africanness, of their history, or just the roots of being black here in America as it relates to who they are. Because people aren't taught that. Like when you think of like in Los Angeles, you have the Pico Boulevard. But when people really do research on who Pio Pico was, they'd understand that his roots come from Africa. Yes, he might have some of the colonizers' blood, but that's because of what we faced as a people throughout history. It wasn't by choice. Nobody chose to do that. But that's just what happened throughout history because of the brutalization of Western civilization. So I think that just understanding all of those different components just helps people put things in a certain perspective. And it just takes that moment, it takes that light bulb. Like I said, a lot of people, that light bulb was the pandemic. They were at home. They were able to watch documentaries more. They were able to surf the web, even when they didn't have a job. And then when they were working from home, they were able to do things that they wouldn't be able to necessarily do at work. Being on your phone, access to information, and all of these different components is why we see the how they try to ban things in Florida, banning teaching Black history, and just taking the concepts of wokeness and making it not what it was meant to be, and making it something negative, when wokeness really is the understanding. But when they started seeing that wokeness was getting a concept of respect, people started waking up. That's really what it is. There's nothing deeper to it, but it's a smoke signal a lot of time now when they're talking about wokeness. They it's basically like kind of like the new N word to some degree, as it relates to how people try to use the word and who they're referring to. Because even if they're referring to white people, even if they're referring to any other group of people, when they're talking about we need to stop this wokeness, it all comes back to the fact that Black people started using the concept of wokeness because we as a society don't have the same resources and the same everything, and now we're starting to get those same things, and then we're understanding our history. They want to make it deem negative that you're understanding your history and you're not just sitting there being docile, so they even want to shun you for trying to grow. It seems to be. So I just think that people just have to knock out all of the blocking, because the blocking is going to be there. It's just you have to go around the obstacle, and you have to understand that it's there for you to grow too as a human being. Because if you never face adversities in life, then you'll just assume that everything is just given to you. but you have to understand that there's certain ways to handle certain situations, and that's just what the creator is doing every day. It's a testament to who we are as a people and what we've had to face. Like, that's the reason why we are the strongest people on this planet. It's not just because we want to sit here and brag and say this. No, it's because Western civilization has put us in situations. Even when we look at the prisoners that are in prison and we see what they can, do, even if it's not the most positive, the fact that they can make a shank, the fact that they can do tattooing, the fact that they can do all of these things and they have no resources at all, and they're able to just use their minds to create these different things. It just shows you a level to who we are. Like, no matter where you put black people in this world, you could put us in the hood, the ghetto, you could put us in the suburbs, you could put us in the mansion. It don't matter. You could put us black folks in the mountains. We are going to make something out of nothing, regardless of whatever condition that we face ourselves. And that's what makes us great. It's not because we just think we're great. We know we're great because of what we had to face, and even the adversities that we face today. Because we got to be 3, 4, 5, 10 times better than the white man, and even some of the other counterparts of individuals that they allow to be honorary white people because of the lack of white people that are in society. Whereas they say black people are the minority, but when you really look at things and put it in perspective, they are the minority. They just give honorary quote unquote membership to other groups of people, and we see it every day. And they give these honorary memberships because they need people to fulfill that. That's even what they were doing with the immigrants when they were bringing, the people from Ireland, when they were bringing the people from Russia. By default, they don't really look at them as the same, but they just gave them that honorary membership because they want them to go out and do their deeds, because they knew that if we understood that all of the different places that we see in the world, Russia, original people were black, uh, um, France, original people are black. Everywhere the original people are black. And that's why even in America, they know black people built America, but they want to give it to the concept of immigrants because they know that black people built this country, and a lot of the immigrants that came over might have fulfilled the job after it was, 75, 80% complete, and the foundation and the blueprint was already there. And then they just do that now. That's why we see a lot of things that we're seeing. But that's why understanding history and understanding certain things, some things you don't even need to know. It's clear as day. But then there's certain things that we really need to understand, and who's telling this history is very key to it. And that's why we got to do our research. We can't just listen to things for face value, because on the negative of some of the social media, we have a lot of people out here that just go and make videos and talk about blase, but they're not studying under scholars. They're not studying under the elders. They're just talking the talk, and they're throwing it off. And that's why when people try to give that title like Hotep niggas, and they say things like that, they give a moniker about, because there are some individuals in the conscious community that are utilizing trying to be spiritual and trying to be conscious to hustle black folks and do negative things, and then it gives sort of a bad rap against the other people that are really doing what they need to do. So I do think people need to understand who to follow and who to not follow, because that's really going to be the indication of when you're getting this information, is it true or false, based off of the person that you're getting it from. So once you hear some information, do the research for yourself. Don't just listen to somebody because they said it and you just assume that they know what they're talking about. You got to do the research for yourself and then get that verification and then move on. Because I think that sometimes people just get the information, they listen to it, they regurgitate it. But if you don't cross reference, you're not going to understand. Even when you're doing a paper in school, you do a first draft, second draft, you revise, you do different things because it's a process. It's not just you go in and do it and it's done. Everything is a process, and you got to trust the process. And I think that once we as a people really totality understand our history, we will be progressing as we are right now.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for just sharing everything that's being told to release right now and come out of you. Because I know a lot of people that watch it are gonna learn from it. So I'm excited for them. I love education. I love learning.
Yes.
Let's go back more into you. So you grew up in New York. What part of New York?
I grew up in New York, the Bronx, Co-op City to be exact, but the Bronx for that matter. You know that when people hear the Bronx, they know that they might not know Co-op City, but they know the Bronx for that matter. But growing up in the Bronx, yeah,
What was it like there? Isn't it more of a Latino predominantly space?
yeah, I would say so. Definitely, especially the areas that I even went to school at and things like that. Like I graduated from Lehman College, where you go to Lehman College. That's in the Bronx. There's heavily predominantly Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Dominican, and then you go to places like Fordham Road, which is that's almost 95% of people that live there are either Puerto Rican or Dominican or Mexican or something of a Hispanic quote unquote background, so to speak. But just growing up in the Bronx, it just and then I'll be honest with you, and then coming out to the West Coast, being out here in Seattle and seeing the difference of Hispanic, ethnic background. Like I think people have to understand that if you grew up in Los Angeles, you grew up in Seattle, grew up anywhere on the West Coast, you might have a certain perspective about Hispanic people, quote unquote, their backgrounds and where they come from. And then when you grow up on the East Coast, you have a completely different understanding because I think there's more of a camaraderie with Black people and Hispanic people, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, on the East Coast, like New York, New Jersey. I just think there's a little bit more camaraderie just being out here in Seattle for the past 5 years. I don't see any real community with the Hispanic background people and blacks or anything for that matter. But I know when I grew up in New York in the Bronx, I definitely had a lot of people that I associated with that were either Puerto Rican or Dominican, and I was cool with. They were cool with us, and I think that, to a certain degree, they kind of understood who we are because even just looking at me, people might have thought I'm Hispanic. But then if people could look at me and know that I'm a Black man, but even though I might look or fit a certain, look that might be Hispanic, then that just goes to show you that we all the same to some degree, and we all have certain features and certain commonalities that we share with one another. So I think just growing up in New York and then now being out here in Seattle on the West Coast, and even times when I've been to Los Angeles and other places on the West Coast, it's just I think there's a different concept of just how history is taught in the sense of the upbringing, because I think maybe just in New York growing up in that there's just a different things that might be taught to a person growing up as it relates to how to have relationship and communionship with people who are Black or here African American or people from abroad, people from the UK or the continent of Africa itself.
Yeah. Were you growing up in New York though, were you encouraged to like read or to study? What was it like growing up with a father like yours, or was your father busy booked teaching people? Was your mother the primary person, or how was it growing up?
I would say that growing up, I definitely, because of who my father is and because of my mother's presence as well, in combination to both of them, it was just a certain thing that was just assumed, like going to school. It was assumed to do good in school, do what you're supposed to do, because majority of the time, just having my background and who my father is, I learned a lot of things that I did at home. I learned a lot of things I did just going various places. I always knew that you do good in school, make sure you get good grades, make sure, because my father always told me that, regardless that you might not ever use your diploma in life, having that piece of paper definitely opens the door and definitely just puts you in a different, you know, uh, um, a different, look as it relates to just being able to, go through certain doors because you have these certain things. It's no different than some certifications. If a person wants to do something in film and development, go to a school and get a certification in that area, and then that will open the door because you could be the best photographer, videographer, but if you can show that you went through the process and you show that okay, you went through this process and you came out successful, okay, then they know where they can understand to put you at. So I think that just growing up, I had different various, things to do when I came home. I had, a couple pages to do in a ELA book, couple pages to do in a math book, do some reading, make sure, like, because this generation, they don't really even give homework that much to some students. But when I was coming up, after lunch, you would immediately have to kind of like write down what your homework was. Or if you had different classes, they would just tell you what your homework was. So just always work. It was always about getting work done first, and then you can enjoy, playing video games or going outside and, hanging with your friends. But the cornerstone, what I think is that the work needed to get done in order for me to get all that I needed to get, because you have to have balance. If people just want to focus on just seeing some of the situations with parents that when their child just wants to play video games all day, it doesn't really work out the best, because it's about focusing. It's about, can you transition? Can you go from one thing to the next? And that's just like how life is, because life is about transition. You can do one thing at one moment, but can you transition and shift? Because life, especially for Black folks, is always changing and it's always shifting, and things are always kind of altering. So you just have to be ready and kind of expect the unexpected. But just growing up, there was just a level of expectation of, doing that work, being a scholar, but also understanding that school is going to be something you're doing because you need to get that piece of paper. Because yes, you're going to do what you want to do, and it might not necessarily need that piece of paper, but because that can just open some doors, there's certain obstacles that you just won't have to face. And I think, especially when you're a Black man, Black woman in America, you're just going to have to finesse your way through the system. And I think that it's not about cheating or doing anything like that, but I do think that Black folks in particular have to finesse certain aspects, certain areas of life to be able to get what they want to get, because this world ain't set up fair. So in order to get what you want, sometimes you might gotta finesse. You can't just always live by the book. Just being honest.
Oh no, for sure. And I really wish somebody would have told me that a little earlier, because I was not saying I wasn't doing things that I needed to do, but I just the guilt I felt and the way I was like, the way I understood it was just, it wasn't right. I don't think it was. So definitely we have a different, um, we have like a different set of challenges to face as Black people,
Yes.
for sure. But okay, so with the young people though, the next generation, so twice a week, I'm an education consultant for my high school that I went to, is Dorsey High School. It's a legendary, one of the last predominantly Black high schools in LA, actually. Um, so I teach there from the documentaries that I've created, and other work that I come across that I think might be empowering to the students. They're about 17, 18 years old, so they're about to graduate this June. And I'm always trying to figure out, and even with my teacher, we co-teach in the classroom, like how do we get them to care about this stuff? Like it's cool that we like it. Like he's 53, I'm 26. We're trying to, I went to an HBCU. I know that they all don't know this information. They all may not even go to college. I tell them they all may not finish college. So how am I going to, give it to y'all in a way that y'all care and could do something with it? So what do you think we can do to get young people activated and interested in this information, in this history?
Well, I think that the number one thing to get, people interested is that, because, like we got to meet them where they at. With the young people, they're interested in music, they're interested in, various arts, they're interested in different things. And we have to show them the origins, because for the kids who like to dance, show them the origins of dancing and where that came from. Because I think that what's missing, especially in the schools, is the origins of things when it comes to the music, when it comes to dancing, when it comes to just a lot of different things. People have to understand, the background is, even when you're doing an experiment, you have to, get the background information. You have to do, questions, you have to hypothesis, you have to do the procedure, you have to do all of these things before you get that end result. So I think that in order for people to really value, and it's also the other component, because when certain kids come to school, they feel comfortable, but when they go home, the environments that they live in might not deem the most safe for the way they want to feel. So I think that, having various after school programs and different things. And I think that we have to work with you know various different people, trying to get other people on board, because I think the key is the strength in the numbers, and just working with other people, because there's a lot of people out here that are doing a lot of things that coming together would really create, a better space. Because a lot of these environments, for instance, like places like Leimert Park, there might be some activities that go on there that people might not deem the best. But if you create that atmosphere to always have something, going on with young people, because young people is the future. Young people is what puts smiles on a lot of people's faces when they see them doing what they're doing, and it just shows you, and it gives you the hope for the future. So, and even working with older people and younger people, working with people who might be 17, 18, have them work with people who are 10 and 11, having like a big brother kind of system. Because I think it's also about, understanding that there are people that might have went through the same things that you went through. And in order to get out of those conditions, you have to see somebody else get out of those conditions. Because a lot of people sit up and say, well, this and that. But when you actually see firsthand somebody who comes out of the same predicament you might face, and even if it's not something like the place where you live or something like that, you might just have to see that a person, let's say a person had a stutter, and you might feel sensitive about your stuttering. If you see somebody that you respect and they stutter, you might start to see different techniques and how they might, avoid stuttering. And it gives you just hope, because I think a lot of people have to see, and I think that's the importance of children and having a mother and having a father and having both of those components. Because when the child can see themselves in the adult, and vice versa, the adult sees themselves in the child, there's always going to be hope to continuing the legacy. And the one thing they don't want to see with Black folks is that they don't want to see the legacies of us. That's why they broke our families apart, and they made it that, oh, you want to be able to get money, you want to be able to get welfare, well, the father can't be in the house. And if the father's in the house, you ain't going to get no money. So they kind of made it a catch 22, where it's like the father ain't in the house, you get more money, but then there's no male figure, there's no male role model. Even if it's not the father, let it be a stepfather, because at the end of the day, the male representation and the female representation together is going to work and create success. And one component is going to do certain aspects as it relates, then the other component is going to do certain aspects, and then coming together. People don't have to always try to compensate one for the other. That's why there's importance for both. So I think that just with, the young people, as you were saying, just getting them together and understanding that, everybody is trying to do what they want to do as it relates to being successful. Nobody's really going to say they don't want to be successful. Everybody wants to be successful, even if you're a person on the corner selling drugs, even if you're a person doing stuff you ain't supposed to do. You probably are doing those things because you want to be successful. It's just that you might not know other means. You might have resorted to doing certain things because of the conditions. Because I'll never shun anybody for doing things such as selling drugs or illegal activities, because at the end of the day, I can understand to a certain degree why us as a people sometimes have to resort to doing things to make money and to do certain things. Especially some of the places I've been, I can really understand. I've never been in that situation, but I can truly understand why some of our people do what they do in order to survive, because they're trying to survive. They're not doing it because they just want to do it and they just want to see harm done and things of that nature. No, we are not inherently like that. We've been conditioned to be like that because of history and Western civilization. And once we break those chains, we'll be able to get to where we need to be, and then we won't have to worry about certain things. We do a lot of worrying as a people because of the conditions that we face. But once we break that barrier, break those chains, we'll be able to get what we want to get in society. And like I said, we're doing it right now. And that's the thing, because a lot of people might say, well, what are people are doing? But I think people are doing what they're doing because, that's what they deem right. And I think that everybody continuing to do what they're doing is going to lead, this generation and the next generation and the next generation to come, because it's about leaving the long legacy for the future, because you can't just think about the now. You have to think about the future generations and keeping it going. And just the same way we see certain negative cycles being continued, and we want to continue and do the positive cycles. So the next generation and the next generation, they're continuing the positive cycles that we've set up for them, instead of us having to face the negative cycles that we've had to face past couple generations.
Yes, sir. Okay, time is getting us. I want to make sure we get the story behind your name, like Heru itself. I know everybody may not know the story, and yeah, I remember I saw on your profile as well, you had reposted Anthony Browder's interview on the Rock Newman show. And I remember when I first saw that interview, because I love the Rock Newman show because of the guests he has on there. But when I saw that interview with Anthony T. Browder, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool information. But you would think that it was like more people would know about it. I don't know. But can you talk about your name and the meaning?
Well, my name Heru, it basically represents the resurrected one. It represents the falcon, the deity, as it relates to the resurrected one, as it relates to the eye of Heru being the all-seeing eye, being the protector, and understanding those different components. Because I think when we look at history as it relates to Kemetic history, we see a lot of things in their representations. Not a lot of our history, some of our history wasn't meant to be taken so literal. It was supposed to be the figurativeness around it, like having the head of a falcon, the figurativeness, seeing these birds and seeing the alligators and the cats and the dogs and the different animals, and seeing the characteristics that they have, and seeing that, oh, there are certain characteristics in human beings, male, female, just like we know the cat by step, that's a feminine principle. But then we look at Heru, that's a masculine principle. And then we look at all of these different components and how they make it up. So when you hear the flapping of the wings of the falcon, that's where they get the word Heru from. And then just a lot of different components, sound, and that's why sound is key. Sounds help create the words that we see. That's why when we even look at the hieroglyphics, the medunetta, we see that instead of always having to write the letter, you have the picture for it, you have the representation. And it's also even maybe some ways that they even tried to speak in code to some degree, because if you don't understand that language, you don't know what they're saying. So maybe they meant that to be for foreigners, and people trying to, because we see that they stole a lot of it. They tried to destroy the Sphinx by shooting the nose off. They tried to do a lot of those things. So our people knew that this history was going to be rich one day, and they knew that just to protect it. And even now, as we can see how it was written in the stone, that's why you can't even do nothing to it now, because it's written in that stone. So I just think that a lot of different things that our ancestors laid out, and everything they did, even the creation of the pyramids, for it to be still standing today, just goes to show you what the intricateness that our ancestors had, and the type of things that we could tap into today if we put our minds to it and stop getting caught up in some of the things that we see on TV that kind of limits what our abilities are. Because we see us and we see we're great, we're great in movies, we're great in music, we're great in everything. But even our greatness in music and movies, I still do believe that a lot of the celebrities and a lot of musicians are still being limited to their full potential of their craft, because Western civilization wants to control the messages, wants to control the images. So they're not just going to allow people to freely be free, because in history, when they did allow that, you see a lot of the revolutionary music that was created, and you can see why they stopped that from happening, because they saw what was going to happen. When you look at people like Marvin Gaye, what's going on, you know, all of that music, from the generation of the 60s and 70s, it resonates today, because things in certain aspects have changed, yes, but there are things in certain aspects that are completely the same. And we would hope that because they were saying this 40 years ago, that we would be living in a time that was different. And we are, but we still got more ways to go. But I just think that, understanding that history, and just tying it back to my name, Heru, and just understanding that, you know, our history is one that is like no other, and it's proof that, you know, throughout all the circumstances that we face, we're going to be on top. We're going to be doing what we're doing no matter what we might see or have to, you know, face. We're going to get through all our obstacles, and just understanding that, and understanding that, you know, being intelligent and understanding certain things, being knowledgeable is the key. Not being smart is not going to be the key to the future. Some people might try to embrace not being, you know, the smart person, and they want to be more of the cool person, but trust and believe those go hand in hand, because when you grow up, the real cool person is the one who's knowledgeable, the one who has the information inside him to be able to make the best decisions when it comes to business, when it comes to just what they do on an everyday basis. So I think that, you know, that's really what we as a people need to hone in on.
Oh my glad I'm stuttering. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you said that about the people who are like, I guess, nerds or whatever, like right now. Like, don't sleep on them. You know, you're gonna see just how valuable all them books or whatever they was doing are gonna be to you in the future. I definitely felt like that when I was going to school, just like, you know, weird, not really fitting in with people. But I people would say I was smart, you know, my family said I was smart, but I'm just like, what? Where is it at? My peers ain't seeing it. And just I try to tell younger people too in high school, just not to like let what your peers think of you like really like, you know, dictate what you think of yourself, because we're all learning ourselves. They lost too, you know. But
Yep.
last question, because I want to be respectful of your time. What do you hope to accomplish before you leave this earth?
What I hope to accomplish is definitely get to as many people that I can get to across, as it relates to getting this information and getting this knowledge, because just going various different places, meeting different people, and just being able to touch people's lives as it relates to uplifting them, even giving them the motivation, even if you don't give them the answer, if you give them just the blueprint or the layout to achieve that. That's, you know, that's really all a person who devotes their life to making sure that we don't make the same mistakes of the past, and we don't allow the same things to happen again. Because if we continue to allow certain things to happen, then why would the next generation want to do anything other than that? They'll just continue what we're laying out for them if we don't step up. And if we step up, then that's the legacy we're going to be laying out for them, and that's what they're going to be expected to do. It's about expectations. You have to lay out certain expectations that you want, and leading that charge has to be somebody who is able to be the voice of reason, be the voice for the voiceless, and just, you know, understanding that no matter what, you know, we do see as it relates to what we see outside, and all of the different things we see on TV, we hear all of these different heinous stories about young black people, getting into situations that, you know, we don't definitely don't want to see. And it really, you know, boils our blood to see some of the incidents that are happening, especially to the young people, you know, even like with the young boy who was shot twice in Kansas City. Like, even an honest mistake as a black man you can't make. You got to worry about being shot and killed. See, and it's not even about being a criminal or having a criminal past or having a criminal image or looking a certain way. You could look straight, clean cut. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your blackness is what they're targeting. So at the end of the day, what I want to leave as it relates, before anything would ever happen to me, I want to leave the legacy that my father left, that I can leave on other people. And then as it relates to them taking the baton and continuing this legacy. So when we look at it like a year 3000, so to speak, we can see definitely greatness in the forecast for what we going to be doing as a people.